Okay, we're back for another edition of Books You Need to Know About, and as always, this episode is going to be split into three parts: traditional publishing, indie publishing, and some special editions you need to know about. But before we get into it, I need to cover two news. Firstly, you might have seen that Folio Society did some super exclusive editions of The Lord of the Rings with some new illustrations, and they were signed by Alan Lee. Now, these books are really beautiful, but they were priced at £1,000. That is absolutely insane. You can literally buy a used car for that money. While the books are incredibly beautiful, you definitely mostly pay for the exclusivity. These books look like maybe £200-300 book in my opinions, but since they're only limited to 1,000 copies, they can charge crazy money. And the even more crazy part is that these sold out quite quickly, so that is £1 million of revenue for Folio. Wow. The other news is that Penguin has officially released 40 new audiobooks of Terry Pratchett's Discworld. These new audio recordings are narrated by some big names such as Andy Serkis and Bill Nighy, and I was fortunate enough to get an early access to Small Gods and Equal Rights. They also sent me some barcodes so you can listen to a sample by scanning these. If you're a fan of Discworld, then this is definitely really exciting news and definitely something you should check out. Now, let's get into this episode. Let's talk about traditionally published books coming in May. Initially, I didn't think there was that many books coming, but then I looked it up and I was really surprised. So I'm only focusing on some books that I think you might find interesting because there are just way too many books. First up, we have the sequel to Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which has just come out on the 28th of April, so it's technically not May. Now, I read Shards of Earth last year and I think I just wasn't smart enough to appreciate it. That book was very hard on the science, but Shards of Earth has received a lot of praise from people such as Daniel Green, so if you're a fan of space opera and hard sci-fi, then this series is definitely worth checking out. Secondly, Holly Black is coming out with a new adult fantasy novel called Book of Night on the 3rd of May. Now, I haven't read anything by Holly Black, but I know that this is an incredibly popular author, and I saw Del Rey, the publisher, making some really fancy art with sprayed edges and stuff. A lot of people seem to be really excited about this one, so I'll keep my eyes on the reviews coming out. I will leave the synopsis here if you're interested in knowing more about this book. We then have a release coming which I haven't heard anyone talk about, which I found really surprising because this book is coming from a legend in the fantasy genre, Guy Gavriel Kay. Yes, he is getting a new book on May 17th and no one is talking about it. I haven't read anything by Kay yet, but his books are definitely on my radar. Why is no one talking about this book? If you're a fan, then it's definitely worth keeping your eyes on this one. Now, there's so many more, so I'm just gonna go really quickly through the next 5 books. I will leave links down below so you can check out more details about these books if you want to. So, we have Under Fortune Stars by Ren Hutchins coming out on the 10th of May from Rebellion Publishing. This is a space opera with a very beautiful cover. On the same day, Siren Queen is coming, which is a fantasy coming-of-age story that one of my contributors on the blog has read and reviewed, and she really enjoyed this one. There are a lot of books coming out on the 10th of May, because on the 10th of May we also have The Color Bound by Rebecca Zahabi. I was really fortunate to receive an ARC of this book, and recently I actually met her and she was so nice. I ended up giving this one 3 stars, but if you enjoy atmospheric books where you just have to flow with the story, then pick up this one. I did post a full review on my blog if you're interested in knowing my full thoughts on The Color Bound. Then on the 17th of May we have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, which is a high fantasy book coming from Orbit. Now, Orbit is definitely one of the biggest players in the world of fantasy publishing, and they have marketed this book quite heavily, and the early reviews seem to be quite positive actually. So this book is definitely one to keep an eye on. And lastly, on May 31st we have the sequel in the Deathless series coming, called The Merciless Ones. Last year I saw a lot of people talk about The Gilded Ones, and it currently has an impressive 27,000 ratings on Goodreads, so I'm sure a lot of people are really excited for the sequel. Also, these covers are gorgeous. But those are some of the most exciting traditionally published books coming in May. Now, let's talk about some indie books. And as always, I'll use Rob J. Hayes' amazing blog highlighting all the exciting books coming. I'll only mention 4 indie books, and then you can go to the blog and look up the others if you're interested. Now, speaking of Rob J. Hayes, Rob J. Hayes just announced that you can now order new hardbacks of the War Eternal series with stunning artwork from Felix Ortiz and Sean King. These books look so freaking good. I am seriously considering ordering these just because the cover art is absolutely insane and so beautiful. I probably shouldn't order these because I have already spent way too much money on books this year, but Would you just look at these books? So beautiful. Also, Rob J. Hayes is also releasing a new book on the 3rd of May called Sins of Mother, and it also has gorgeous cover art. This is book 4 in the War Eternal series. I know nothing about this series, but the cover art is definitely making me want to pick up these books. Then we have Lightgiver by Mike Slade, which I believe you can order now actually. I read that book 2 months ago as my indie book of the month, and I gave it 3 stars. If you're looking for a coming-of-age fantasy story with riveting pace, then that is absolutely worth reading. Also, Mike added a quote from my review inside the book, which is pretty cool. And as always, my full review for that book is on the blog. Then we have King's Radiance coming from L.R. Schulz. Now, one of the contributors on the blog recently read this one and absolutely loved it. She even messaged the group and told us it was so good and she wanted us to pick it up, so I'm definitely intrigued. I'm trying to cut down on how many review requests I accept, but I did receive an e-arg of this one, so I might give this one a try someday. Unfortunately, I do not particularly like the cover. Oh, and lastly, up-and-coming indie superstar Ryan Cahill is set to release his new novella, The Exile, on the 21st of May. I have read all of Cahill's previous books and I am a fan, so I'll definitely be reading this one very soon. Okay, I need to give an update. I was fortunate enough to receive an arc of The Exile and that was crazy good. I read it in 2 sittings, so I will post my full review on my blog and my Instagram page, but I'm guessing I'll probably give it a 4.5 or 5 stars considering it's only a novella. It was really, really impressive. I might be a bit biased. I mean, I own all of Ryan's books and he's used my quotes on some of his books before, but wow, really, really impressed. Unfortunately, you kind of have to read all of these books first before you can read The Exile, but I would definitely suggest giving his books a go. Did someone say special editions? But first, do you really need to spend more money on books? Now, we don't have as many exciting special editions coming this month. I tried looking around, but I didn't find that many. Maybe I was just looking in the wrong places. I know I did mention Babel by R.F. Kuang in last month's video, but the internet is going crazy for that book. And if you were one of the crazy ones, then I have some really good news. You can now pre-order a special edition from Barnes & Nobles. I am actually really interested in that edition, but for some reason Barnes & Noble, they don't ship to the UK, so I guess I won't be getting that one. I will leave a link down below if you want to pre-order it. Also, you can still order a signed edition of Gallant by V.E. Schwab from the Forbidden Planet, and that edition has beautiful sprayed edges. I recently went to a Forbidden Planet and they had those editions and it was so beautiful. I haven't read that one, but it's definitely a nice book if you're into sprayed edges and stuff like that. I'll go really quickly through the next ones. If you're looking for signed copies of Electra by Jennifer Saint, Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson, or The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, then I'll add links down below where you can find signed copies. I also found a new biography coming out about Terry Pratchett, which is going to be signed by the author Rob Wilkins, which you can now pre-order. It definitely looks like a really fancy book. Link down below. And if you want to go buy even more signed books, then I would recommend checking out The Broken Binding, where you can get 5% off by using Library for Viking 7. If you do use that code, then that does support me. So that is it. Are you excited about any of the books I just mentioned? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to my Patreons. I really, really appreciate it.